is really going to be a key. Ooh, look at this guy. He even gave me a little thumbs up. That was awesome.
Hi. Over the past few weeks, there have been a few different stories out there related to freight tracking and visibility, including one that we at Rollzi participated in. Billions of dollars in venture capital have been invested, mergers, partnerships, solutions built on the blockchain, and more. The future of trucking will no doubt be a future where data warehouses are logging the position of trucks across the globe every minute and making real-time updates to arrival times, personnel scheduling, prioritization, rerouting, inventory levels, and no doubt a bunch of solutions that haven't even been thought of yet. But what about step one? What about just reporting the basics of where a truck is and whether it will be on time to the appointment? With all the time, money, and technology advancements, have we been able to eliminate a person making a phone call to a truck driver to ask where they are and if they'll be on time?
Since I left the pick, they've probably called me about 3 or 4 times now.
Stick around and I'll test the latest in tracking and tech and talk about where the technology might be headed next. This week, we took a short distance load overnight. With tracking technology news articles reaching a fever pitch, I wanted to see if the industry was ready to eliminate check calls altogether. First, what is a check call and how has it evolved? Well, a check call used to mean the driver would make a phone call to a dispatcher. One when the driver was loaded, and another when they were empty, and another if something went wrong. Back in the 70s and 80s, this required the driver to call from the shipper, the receiver, or at a truck stop from a payphone. No problem. They usually had a good relationship with their dispatcher, and the call might have served the driver as well with information about weather, traffic, or the next load. Since the mid-1990s, drivers have had cell phones and the check calls became more frequent, oftentimes a daily early morning call right from the truck. Now that mobile phones are ubiquitous and the industry has become more complex, check calls are a thing of the past. Sort of. Today, there are independent agents, dispatchers, company fleet managers, and brokers with huge operations teams that are all trying to become more efficient. All this additional complexity means that there is no longer just one person to place a phone call to, so now the calls are inbound. Many companies have tried to solve this problem by tracking the mobile phone of the driver. That kind of worked for a while, but as privacy laws have evolved, the market has fragmented. We're now starting to see all that fragmentation start to consolidate again, and that's where our experiment comes in. I picked a really easy load for this test. It picks up in the afternoon and delivers in the middle of the night. Traffic should be pretty light and I should have minimal delays, making the tracking pretty straightforward. I opted in to have both my truck as well as the phone tracked. We're using the latest in tracking tech, so let's get rolling.
Then I'm just gonna pull out here, and I'm gonna go ahead and close my doors once I get up to the guard shack.
While most of the tracking tech isn't brand new, there can be bugs. There are a lot of pieces working together to collect my location, package it up, transmit it to a third party, and then on to the broker or whoever wants to know where I am. So I looked back to see what the broker was seeing, and indeed they were definitely able to see where I was, and that I was tracking on time. You can see here the history of what the broker sees. Tracking of my truck began 3.5 hours before the pickup, and it's clear I'm headed towards the pickup. I guess they even could have taken a look at Google Maps to see the real-time traffic and understand why I was moving so slow. One reason I might have received some of the early calls was that at the pickup, you can see here that the tracking has me 2 hours and 13 minutes late, even though my actual arrival time is only 10 minutes after the scheduled arrival. It looks like this is just a data entry issue since the departure from the pickup has a schedule that is the same as the arrival. The system is likely looking at that as a delay when it's really just the time that it took to get loaded. But an automated system and an overnight operations specialist is just following a checklist of tasks, so I can see how this error could happen. Back to that delivery before I get another phone call asking where I am.
All right, well, we made it to Kennewick. I'm not totally sure where the store is yet, but I'm sure we're gonna find it here pretty quickly. Looks like we're about 4 minutes away. pretty uneventful trip. We had plenty of time built in to the schedule. Let's see, my ETA now was 1:06. When I left the shipper, it was, I believe it was 12:45. So we lost a little bit of time. I stopped a couple of times. Oh, here's Winco. So it looks like my GPS is routing me, hopefully to a truck entrance. The broker did call me actually in about 15 minutes ago and asked me what my ETA was, and I said 1:06, and I'm almost right on. So hopefully they don't call me again here while I'm trying to back in. That would be inconvenient. But looks like I am just about here. I'm gonna try to, I see some truck trailers. So I'm gonna make a couple assumptions here that is my truck entrance. I'm gonna loop around here and see if, it looks like a pretty good place for me to get in. Question will be where the door is. Just hold up there, Ford Explorer. Let me get back here. It's a big grocery store for a small town. All right, I see a big dumpster back here, and where there is a dumpster, there is usually a loading dock. Yep, looks like we got a couple of loading docks here. And I see a door, so I'm gonna guess that is the receiving door. So I'm just gonna pull up here. I'm gonna go see if I can get somebody to come to that door. See if anybody comes. I didn't grab my cell phone. So hopefully somebody comes and helps us out. We got our door, there's only one, so it's easy. All right, there's our door right there. Take a little peek here to make sure our water made it okay. Everything looks good, no shifting. That is great. So we're gonna back it in. All right, here we go. I'm gonna back up a little bit here. Just kind of reline this up. It's my first time delivering to a grocery store. To be fair, it's only my second delivery, so I guess every delivery is going to be my first of something for quite a while, I guess. But I will say, I've made this delivery, at least a very similar one, hundreds of times in American Trucking Simulator. So I really feel like I've got it down. I'm gonna swing in here. Try to get my trailer as close to lined up as I can.
Okay, now that I've dropped off that load, let's see what the broker saw. The tracking accurately reported that I arrived at my stop 25 minutes before my appointment. They report that I delivered early, when in reality it took a couple hours to get unloaded, so I didn't actually deliver early, even though I did arrive 30 minutes early, but I guess the driver can only control so much. I got a nice rest after the drop-off and a little hike near my parking spot.
Just finished up my 10-hour reset. Found a really nice little place to park here, out here by a river. Little bit of traffic, not too bad. There's also just kind of a cool little bridge over here. If you can see that in the distance. So we're gonna get back out here on the road. See if we've got any cars coming. We are good. Guy did not trust me that I would not get into his lane. That's fine. So there's been a lot of talk lately about track and trace and companies getting into tracking and tracing. We had a few years ago the ELD mandate from the federal government, and mandated all semi-truck drivers had to have an electronic logging device on board their truck. And what that means today is basically I have a little computer that connects into the truck computer, and it does a lot of different things. When I get in the truck and I start it up, this camera up here actually looks at my face, does a little facial recognition, and it knows that I'm the driver of the truck. Then when the truck begins to move, if I go over 5 miles per hour, it automatically switches my status into driving. You might have noticed here that it went into driving mode without me actually doing anything. I didn't have to tell it that I was driving. You used to actually have to put on a paper log that you went into the drive line. Now it's automatically logged. Also part of your hours of service is location. So you used to write down in your logbook where you were. And the DOT, if they stopped you, not only would they look at the drive hours that you said you were driving, but they would also look at where you were when you reported that, and they obviously know where you are while they're doing the audit, and they can start to sort of piece together your speed and how honest you were of your logs. There are still some ways that you could mess up the ELD. Maybe you go into personal conveyance or a yard move or something like that, and you leave it in that status. And so the ELD still needs to log where you are. Because of that, it has GPS built in. And so there's a lot of companies now that are just using that onboard GPS to track the truck instead of the driver. So now you have some of the brokers and maybe some other third parties that are trying to use the technology in your phone, the GPS in your phone, and others that are using the GPS in the truck, and some that are using both. I prefer not to use cell phone tracking. There's a lot of reasons. One, it just kills the phone's battery. I provide iPhones for all my drivers, and it's not actually that great for them to constantly be draining the battery that much. It starts to get really hot when all of the apps are pinging the location of the phone constantly, and they are. Some of them are really, really bad. Some are better than others. But either way, when you're booking loads from brokers, all of the brokers have their own app, and they all want you to use their app, and so they're all pinging your location, and it really kills the battery and causes lots of extra charging. And then of course that when we're doing this inductive charging, it creates a lot of heat, and I just don't know that it's very good for the hardware. The other reason is I use the phones to communicate with my drivers. They use them for entertainment. They can plug them into the TV in the back. They use them for all kinds of other things, and I don't want them to have a dead battery if they're away from the truck. I don't want them to. I also don't want them to be tracked personally. If I have a driver that is on his 34-hour reset and he decides he wants to go home for a couple of days, I don't want him to have to remember every time to turn off all of his location services. I don't want him to not want to carry around the phone that I'm providing to be able to communicate with him. I don't like using drivers' personal phones I just feel like you start getting into a lot of gray area. They're paying the bill. It's for their own use. I don't want to say, hey, you have to answer the phone when I call you on your personal phone, if they're off. So I try to create like a good line between work and home time. And I think providing a phone is part of that. And therefore, I don't want brokers tracking my driver's person. I want them to track the truck. That's really what's important. So that said, I prefer using integrations like 4Kites, MacroPoint, or Project 44 when they track the truck. We took a load and we took it from one of the tech brokers, and part of their value proposition is location services and always knowing where the load is. And that's part of the value proposition, not to the driver, but to the shipper or to the firm that has the goods that you're moving. The value proposition to the driver and to the carrier is, hey, you can avoid those check calls that we talked about. You don't have to worry about us calling you, at all hours of the night or throughout the day or while you're driving. And that actually is a valuable proposition. I don't want my drivers to have to worry about answering the phone every half hour while they're driving. They're driving a big vehicle, and there's a lot of other things to pay attention to. You need to pay attention to road signs, pay attention to low bridges, pay attention to your directions, your GPS. Being concerned with a phone call shouldn't be one of those things. So for this test, what I did is I booked a really simple load, a load that would be really easy to be on time for. I took it myself because I don't drive very often, and so of course I have completely fresh hours. The load was only a 250 mile load, and so I would be able to complete it on time with plenty of room to spare, and it should have been a very straightforward load. I did all of the tracking possible, so I told the broker that I would be driving, so they knew to track my version or my app on my phone. I also told them that I'd be driving Seattle SLU, so they could track it via Project 44, which is the third party between my ELD, which is Samsara, and the broker. And I took all of the calls that I could. So I hit the road, and with full tracking on, my first phone call came about 4 hours before the shipment. The next phone call came, again, fully tracking, and the next phone call came 45 minutes before the pick, and I was going to be 30 minutes early. So let them know I'm going to be early. And from there, maybe every couple of hours. In this case, tracking didn't seem to matter. I know that track and trace is just part of logistics. I really am looking forward to a time when we can use all the technology that's available to us and really start cutting out some of the inefficiencies. My biggest problem with all the phone calls, I talked about it from the driver's perspective, it's also just a misallocation of resources. If something goes wrong on a load, it's really hard to get a hold of somebody that can help you with most brokers. They have these teams of people that are following these processes and making these phone calls when they probably could be used for more important tasks like some of the exceptions that are occurring. Even if they aren't able to solve all those problems, it would really feel a lot better and create probably a better relationship with the carriers if they spent more effort on helping to solve some of the problems and less effort with just sort of asking on progress when a load is going well. Back to that load, it did go well. It went perfectly smoothly. I was early to both the pickup and the drop. The pickup and the drop were both completed in under 2 hours each. Everything went as smoothly as possible. I uploaded the bill of lading signed, and so everything actually was perfect with that load. But I probably got half a dozen phone calls. I really think that brokers that are really putting technology forward I really think that they're going to be leading in this space very soon. And these are just process things that they're going to need to figure out. So I think a lot of the new technologies are going to come in terms of really streamlining the track and trace process. As we saw with this experiment, we're not even close yet, but all of the pieces are out there. I think that the product is already there. It's the process and the people that are going to have to adjust. I have noticed that as I work more and more with some of those more traditional brokers, those check calls actually get a lot less frequent because they see who's hauling and they know that if there's a problem, I'm probably going to be reaching out proactively. Some of the new technology brokers actually give me the tools to reach out proactively, I would have to do that as a dispatcher though, and drivers can't do it on their own, and it's not happening automatically. In a perfect world, we would see forecasting being done by the track and trace technology. So maybe as one of those third parties like 4Kites or Project 44 is tracking multiple units going down the road, they see that a scale is open and they're pulling in a higher percentage than usual, increasing the probability that you'll be delayed. Or they see that there is a wreck going through a mountain pass like we're going through right now, and that you're definitely going to be delayed by at least an hour, and they can proactively reach out to the shipper and get back to the carrier if you're going to miss an appointment that is going to have to be rescheduled for another time, or if they can just work you in if you do miss that appointment. So I'm really excited to see some of the innovation around tracking and starting to use it for prediction rather than just real-time location tracking.
The technology keeps improving and is already much better than when I got into the trucking industry a few years ago. In summary, I think the fragmented market is a big part of the problem, and location service aggregators are going to be a key to really solving the issue. Not everyone is open to ditching their own solution in favor of a third party though. I did talk to a product manager from one of my favorite local retailers that does a lot of shipping here in Seattle, and I asked if they would consider using a location aggregation service. They were not open to it at all. They have a slightly different business model though, and they are acting as both a shipper and a broker, and are even getting some of their own trucks. They also have one of the only proactive exception notification systems built into their app, so their long-term game is likely a hybrid model using for-hire carriers and a private fleet in which they control the experience from end to end. You might have heard of them. They do some online sales. It's a company called Amazon, like the river. I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown of how trucks are tracked through their journey. If you would like to see more videos about the behind the scenes of trucking, roll with us here on this channel. And until next time, keep the shiny side up.